Yeah, it's so exciting. GBMC is really so happy to have this initiative coming on board and really kind of works with everything they're already doing. But Patty Dailey Lewis, who is the executive director of the Beau Biden Foundation for the Protection of Children. Is that based in Delaware?
It is. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
That's right.
There you go. You got it.
We heard that. It's turned on. Just
I'm very loud.
It's on. I heard it.
It's on now.
Oh, there you are. Thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
You know, for people who don't know, explain the connection with Beau Biden.
So Beau Biden, as you know, was the Attorney General of Delaware. He was my good friend for many, many years. I worked with him for 8 years. He's also the son of Vice President and Dr. Jill Biden. Beau was a man who was passionately committed to protecting children and child sexual abuse and preventing children from being abused either through schoolmates, bullying, or the abuse of children in general was something that he was committed to.
so how does the foundation work?
Well, we are a 501c3, so like Laura talked about, we do operate on donations. We are committed to carrying on Beau's mission of ensuring that every child is free from the threat of abuse, whether that's from an adult or from another child.
Is it handbooks?
We have a lot of different programming. I brought you one of the books we have. You've talked a little bit about this program that we're going to be doing called Stewards of Children. That's the initiative that we're working on here with the Greater Baltimore Medical Center, and we are absolutely thrilled to be here.
So this is a substructure of Darkness into Light?
Darkness to Light is the parent company of the Stewards of Children
It's a great
program.
name.
Yeah.
Darkness to Light. Cool. So your mission is it's pretty straightforward. Get the word out, help train people.
Yeah, I mean, look, there really are, and I've sat here and listened to Laura and Dr. Trudeau, and we cannot talk to our kids and to our community enough. So we are focused on another program called the Shield of Protection Initiative, where we're working with schools and child-serving organizations to sit with them and look at their policies, their procedures, and their programming. What have we seen in every case of mass child sexual abuse? Afterwards, we have a lot of people who say, oh, that made me uncomfortable. I saw this or I saw that. I was a deputy attorney general for 30 years, watching from a seat that was not a pleasant one to see children who were abused consistently, and it was almost always, as I know Laura talked about, someone they knew. You know, from the time our kids are little, we talk about stranger danger, and we don't do enough talking about their bodies. We don't do enough talking about the grooming process, and we don't do enough talking about coming to a safe adult when they are in a circumstance where they need help, because we cannot go on expecting children to protect themselves. It is our role as adults to protect children, and Beau Biden felt very strongly about that.
I want to be clear about the foundation. Is focused primarily on caregivers, or is there a direct contact with children as well?
We do both. So we go to schools and we talk with kids about being safe online. We talk with them about cyberbullying and bullying. And then we also talk with adults about keeping their children safe and what programs and policies have to be implemented to do that.
Patty, we already have a question.
Oh, wow.
Actually, we got
Couple, maybe.
Actually, we got two questions.
Okay.
Patty, to what extent are schools officially or unofficially taking responsibility for not just sex education, but also child abuse prevention?
That's a great question.
That is a good question.
A lot of states actually are now, schools are under statutory obligation to educate children and parents and everyone in the school system on child sexual abuse and child abuse generally. So for the states that have laws like that, then the schools are directly responsible for providing that information. With regard to sexual abuse and sex education generally, that is really on a school district by school district basis.
And you had another question?
Yes, we do. Actually, with all the support programs for child abuse, have the statistics shown that for numbers of children being abused decreased?
Well, there actually has been a decrease since we started working with this program. When we started working, doing mass trainings,
Directly based on your program?
well, I'm going to hope that it is.
Okay.
I believe that it is overall
So you're
education.
taking data.
Honestly, yes. This program, Stewards of Children, is the only evidence-informed program in the nation. And it's actually in use in every state and in several different countries. So evidence-informed is really important, right? Because otherwise, you're going to get people that have crazy ideas out there putting out
It's all
programs.
anecdotal, right.
Right. So how we came to this program actually was in Delaware. We had a case involving a pediatrician who raped or sexually assaulted more than 1,000 children. The vast majority of those children were pre-verbal, which is a particularly dangerous situation because children are not able even to articulate, which I will also say that I think Dr. Trudeau and Laura did a very excellent job in talking about minimizing opportunity, right? So we had this case where we had all these toddlers and babies and kids who couldn't talk or wouldn't talk, and we had parents that were really groomed from the birth of the child to believe things that were being told to them. So we knew from looking at that case, we reviewed over 8,000 patient files, that this was all preventable. And one day when Beau Biden and I were walking down the street in this town, a woman came up to him and said, "What are you going to do about this?" And of course, he gave our typical lawyer response, you know, we will prosecute this person, we will make sure they are locked up as long as possible, we will protect your children from them. And she said, "No. What are you going to do about it?"
So this was the impetus.
And he said to me, "Patty, we got to do prevention work." And prevention work, honestly, my whole career of prevention work we know has been important, but it has really taken a back seat in almost everything across the board.
Let me ask you, when you say, and I don't know about the ins and outs of this case specifically, but you say it was preventable. Boy, if you can't trust your pediatrician, if you have a pediatrician and you just have a new baby and you know all your friends are going to this pediatrician, and how can a parent, at some point you've got to trust somebody, right? I mean, go ahead.
Trust is an interesting word. Trust but verify, I believe, has been used before. So one of the things we talk about in 5 steps to protecting your children is minimize opportunity. Make sure that your kids are not necessarily one-on-one, unobservable, uninterruptible contact with an adult or an older child. I can tell you in my whole career, I have not seen a case where someone molested a child while parents were sitting there in the middle of a room, unless the parents really did not know what was happening, or in the middle of the mall. So you minimize opportunity. You ask questions. You don't just take a statement as absolutely true because the person who gave it to you is a physician. And we saw that in the case at Michigan.
I know.
It was the same thing.
But the parents sometimes were in the room.
And I know that. And we saw it in the case in Pennsylvania, in Sandusky, where people turned their child over to somebody because everybody thought this person was a great person. This is how abusers operate.
Yeah.
They really can't operate if we look at you and say, well, you're not trustworthy. I don't know you. So it's a matter of heightened awareness that this actually happens.
You have me thinking back to all the time my sons spent with psychologists, where we would go and usher them in the room and sit out in the
Yeah.
lobby. All the times we had tutors into the house, and they would be off at a distant part of the house being tutored or whatever, and we had no idea. Again, just thinking
So
back.
what are some of the red flags that we might be missing, particularly for a pre-verbal child?
Well, there are physical signs in some cases where children, they will
Bedwetting
They
or,
will have bedwetting. They will have sores around their genitalia. They will be very, very reticent to the touch. There are children who will not want to go with a certain person, and I remember in a case one time, it was actually in the Bradley case, a father telling me that his daughter would grip on to the sides of her car seat and scream at the top of her lungs. And so for a lot of parents, You know, we've all had that kid who was gripped onto the car seat and screaming at the top of their lungs. And we had somewhere to go and something to do. So really what we want to make sure people know is just that. Understand that knowledge is prevention. Your education in terms of what actually is happening to children is prevention.
So you're taking this darkness and you're spreading more light, right? How do you decide who to partner with, where to go? This is a big, broad thing that you're trying to do. What are the goals and how do you reach that with your mission? And
So-
why GBMC?
Well, one of the things we look at is the wheel that really makes up the community, right? How does a community move? Well, there's a wheel of the community, and the spokes in that wheel involve the people who really drive the community. So who is that? Law enforcement, educators, medical providers, child-serving organizations, religious organizations. That's who we have looked at generally. And this is an awesome organization. And they have been, Greater Baltimore Medical Center has been committed to making sure that care is given to children, to everybody. But I'm saying we focus on who really cares about making sure that children are safe. And this is an institution that clearly does that. So when we first began, you know, Beau had made this promise when he was Attorney General. We will train 5% of Delaware. Because 5% training will see a cultural shift. We will then see, and you know, across our lifetimes. Remember, I grew up, I'm one of 8 kids. We never had a car seat.
Right.
What did we learn across our lifetime? We've learned that putting kids in car seats diminishes the possibility that they'll be injured in a car accident. So we know that through education, we will see a cultural shift. So Beau said we're going to train 5% of Delaware to see this cultural shift. We're going to keep on training, and we're going to move out. We're going to move to other states, and we're going to take this program to every person that will listen to us. It is our responsibility to protect children. And until we shine a bright light on child abuse like we did on domestic violence, we're not going to see a change. But when we shine this light, it will be okay to say at a cocktail party, yeah, I don't let my kids go there. It'll be all right for parents to say, I don't allow my child to do overnights with people I don't know or in places that I don't know about. I'm a mom too, and I was the mean mom. My daughter, if she's watching right now, is probably writing, she was the mean mom. Because I knew that these dangers were out there. So really everyone should know that. And everyone should pay attention to who's around their children, who has access, and really to minimize opportunity. No one-on-one, uninterruptible, unobservable contact. That's our goal, to make sure that these 5 steps, that people learn the facts, that they minimize opportunity. You've already had wonderful guests. Talk about it. Talk about it. Because if you don't talk about it, other people will. And we've seen that with children that have been molested over a long period of time. You know who was talking to them? The molester, not their parents. Recognize the signs. Look at that child who's become withdrawn and say, what are some of the reasons? Some might be because they're being bullied. Others might be because of abuse. And then finally, and this is another problem we've seen consistently, react responsibly. Call it in. You don't have to be a mandatory reporter to bring this to the attention of the authorities. In Delaware, everyone is a mandatory reporter. We have a very broad law. And now under the Safe Sport Act, that covers any sporting organization that deals with children. Everyone is a mandatory reporter. And it's everyone's obligation to protect children.
Here.
How specifically are you partnering with GBMC, though? What's going to happen?
Well, we're implementing training staff, and then we are going to use, which the Darkness to Light Foundation does for stewards of children, to train the trainer. So once we train a number of staff and we find the best trainers, and you've already seen 2 of them, we will then make sure that Greater Baltimore Medical Center trains in exactly how they want to push this out and implement it within their community.
And then you will move on and work your magic somewhere else.
Well,
right?
I don't think we'll ever leave this organization because...
No, I mean in another state, or the whole goal is to train 5% of every state, right?
every single state.
Right.
And we've already started working with some national groups.
I want to mention you touched on these 5 steps to protecting our children, and I'm sure that we'll get this on Facebook, so anyone who wants to see it, but I'm just going to go over it. 1, learn the facts. 2, minimize opportunity. 3, talk about it. 4, recognize the signs. 5, you just talked about it, react responsibly.
And I assume there's a darkness to light website.
D2L.org.
Oh, that's where that
or
is.
you can go to the Beau Biden Foundation, one word, BeauBidenFoundation.org, on Facebook or on the internet.
What a great legacy he's left. I think we have a question, right?
Yes, there I go again. Yes, we do. We have a question on Facebook. Can you give some examples? I think this is a question for Patty. Patty, can you give some examples of what grooming might look like?
Well, it can start with very little special attention. Little gifts. You'll see some schools now will prohibit any types of gifts. So I see a child that I'm interested, I start giving gifts to that child. Maybe it's things that child doesn't have. Maybe it's a cell phone. I start setting up meetings with individual children, not meetings.
secrets
How
with
about this?
children.
I'm one of 8 kids. We had a priest that would often volunteer to take a couple of my brothers to the movies, take them to the beach, take them places that, with my father passed away when I was 12. So my mom had 8 kids under the age of 13. So when somebody comes up and says, oh, can I take the 2 middle ones to the movies? And I mean, it's the priest. Of course you're going to trust him.
Right.
So people work their way into a family. They come to you wanting to offer their services in a way that seems to be generous and kind and thoughtful. They are master manipulators. That's how they do what they do.
Yeah.
The books on Jerry
Pure
Sandusky,
evil.
he always started with taking a little boy to a game. And then it was another game.
And you found
but it
kids
was-
who needed
Yeah,
that
but-
sort of father figure or parental figure.
And it was always the same system over and over
Yep.
again. So you said they're master manipulators. They are.
And they're looking for opportunities.
So as parents, it's our job not to give them the opportunity. Which I understand what you said, it does seem like, who do you trust?
I mean, you do get to that point where you have to be, but what's the outcome if you don't? So you have to be suspicious about.
I agree with you.
And sometimes those people seem, the type of person that it is in the situation where they are seems a little off, and that's your ding, 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 ding. That's what you need to pay attention to in your brain.
Exactly. And we tell children this too. You know those little hairs on the back of your neck that stand up? That feeling that you get that something is just not right. Trust yourself. Trust your ability to discern danger and discern that something is off. And act aggressively to protect. I don't mean aggressively as a whomping people, but
Sure.
act to protect your children. Because it is our job to do that, to teach them, to provide them comfort and care.
Coming from the background that you come from, I'm just wondering, do you find that the legal system is supportive of some of these situations, or do parents fear getting entangled in something that will cause more angst and harm and not give the satisfactory outcome?
So I'm going to answer the second part, and that is yes. I do think that a lot of people do fear the system, and they fear the length of time it takes. They fear what it will do to their children. But when you think about the number of children that are molested by one single molester, when you look at a Jerry Sandusky, there is a price to pay when we don't step up and speak out. I think the system has gotten much better in the last 34 years that I've seen things evolve. I know that judges receive far greater education on this than they ever did before. In Delaware, for example, and I know in Maryland, in the counties, there are specialized prosecutors that deal with this. We actually had a whole division, and all we dealt with was taking care of children and vulnerable adults and the elderly and people that were in this system that needed that extra hand. The children's advocacy centers do an amazing job.
The CASAs of the world.
Right, the CASAs, the guardian ad litems, they do a great job in protecting the interests of children.
Before we change chairs, one thing I would like to mention, you have to tell parents that it's okay to say no, because a lot of times we don't want to say no to the gift from Uncle John because it's something the child wants. So the child wants to go to the movies, but you have to be willing to say no and stick to it.
You have to be the mean parent sometimes. You have to say, we're not doing that today, or it's very nice of you to offer that, but I know that you want that new whatever set, that new telephone, that new whatever. But right now we're gonna stick with what we have, and then you talk to the adult and say, I am the parent. And if you have things you want to give to my child, then you come to me first and you ask me. That is my decision. And I will tell you that when you look at these cases, these mass cases, the parents that were more aggressive in terms of protecting their role as a parent, protecting their place as a parent, you see abusers pass them by.
Too difficult, yeah.
Right.
It's like if someone's going to rob your house. No one's going to go to the house that has the dog and the
Exactly.
alarm, and because they'll go to the house that's
And
easier.
that's one of the things we talk about with organizations. If you are aggressive with regard to background checks and with regard to enforcement of policy, you don't allow one-on-one. You don't allow, for example, counselors to have relationships with kids and families outside the program. When they see that you have been through the Beau Biden shield of protection, when you know what can be done to guard against predators, they will pass that organization by and go to the next organization that doesn't do that, because they know that the people who work there are educated, they're watching, the parents are watching, and the kids are educated. So we're going to go to an organization that doesn't do that. And that's important.
I know we have to let you go because we have someone else to come on who has wonderful things to say to you, but I just have to ask you one more thing, and it's a little bit touchy. We tend to trust our children with women more than men.
Women are perpetrators too. Women are perpetrators too. And I just screened a movie that I think a lot of people will find shocking. There are women who are direct perpetrators. There are women who participate in the perpetration. There are women who keep the perpetration quiet. In the training, there's a woman named Marilyn Vanderburg. She was Miss America 1958. She was sexually abused by her father from the time she was 4 years old. And she talks about an incident where her mother is coming toward her bedroom late one night, and her father's in there, and she feels, now I'm going to be saved. She's going to come through that door. But her mother never does, because her mother makes a choice, and she doesn't choose Marilyn. And in my career, sadly, I have seen that. I have seen a lot of parents who either knowingly participate or ignore and leave a child on their own. Think about the lifelong damage that does to a child. Because what if you cannot trust the people in your life who are supposed to protect you? Who would you ever trust?
Thank you.
Powerful.
Thank you.
It's a closing
Yeah.
statement right there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.